Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo Fonador with another episode of Asheville Real Estate News. Today, really excited about the conversation that you're going to get to listen with Meredith Switzer. She's the Executive Director of Homeward Bound of Western North Carolina. If you're not familiar with Homeward Bound, really would encourage you all to take a moment and Google them, go to their website. They're an organization, personally, I'm a big fan of here in the area, and their goal is on ending homelessness here in Asheville, Buncombe County. And what they do is they provide basically, I don't know if I'd say it's government backed, but it's definitely subsidized housing. And so they partner with different landlords. I'm one of them here in the area where their clients go in and rent the properties. So today we're actually going to be focusing a little bit on a new project that they're rolling out that's called the Commons. And this is their first foray into ownership of property where they're going to be able to house their own clients in property that they own. So take a listen, let us know what you think, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday. All right, guys, as you heard, I'm really excited about our conversation today. We're talking with Meredith Switzer with Homeward Bound of Western North Carolina. So I'm not going to take up too much of this time introducing her, recapping kind of what we talked about already at the beginning. So just want to give you the floor a little bit, and let's start with what is Homeward Bound?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. It's always exciting to be out in the community and sharing the message of the work that we do and the mission of Homeward Bound. We are a nonprofit organization committed to ending homelessness here in Asheville and Buncombe County.
It's a pretty big and audacious goal there.
It is quite an audacious goal, and we are very excited to be doing this work. We have some amazing community partners, which I'm sure we'll be talking more about a little bit later. As you are aware, and I think many people in our community are aware, we do have a number of individuals in our community experiencing homelessness. And we feel that this work is critical, not because it's the human thing to do, but it's also the right thing to do as a community. And so we put a lot of resources behind not only supporting people where they are when it comes to a variety of issues such as medical, mental health, things like that, but we believe wholeheartedly that the key to ending homelessness is to provide housing. And that's really our number one goal. It's to get people into housing, and then if they need continued services, we can wrap those services around them. And really at the heart of the work that we do is our dedication to the housing first model. It's actually an approach. It's the national best practice in ending homelessness. And what Housing First does is it recognizes and states that, again, the number one goal is to get people into housing, and then you provide services to really keep them there. It's really important that once they are housed, that they have the support to stay in housing.
Is that something that you all do a lot of training with, or I have a little bit of insight, as you all know. Big fan of your all's organization and work with you. When tenants come in, or your all's, I guess, are they clients. Customers? Okay, clients come in. I know we've had different conversations about how sometimes having that structure is almost like a learned skill set, and so I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that when it comes to the housing first model and something. I don't know if that everybody thinks about that or notices that right off the bat, and takes a little bit of unpackaging.
Sure. So it sounds like what you're asking is, how does that approach work in terms of the support that's provided?
Yeah, why is that important, instead of just being like, oh, here's a house, go for it, versus hey, we're going to make sure that this is sustainable and be involved?
Right. That's a great question, and I think that is really what distinguishes the work that we do as a housing first advocate from a lot of other work that's done to address the homelessness issue. We work with people who have been chronically homeless, who have for very many years often been living outside unsheltered. And that's for a variety of reasons. It could be that they just haven't had the social and family support during a time of crisis that caused their homelessness. It could be due to profound medical and mental health challenges that they have. And so oftentimes we see people who have been housed at a point in their life, but because of the circumstance, they weren't able to stay there because they didn't have the right support. And so, especially when we're talking about people who've been experiencing chronic homelessness, it means for many, many years, often they have been unsheltered and have just developed some coping life skills, really survival skills to live outside. I can't imagine what that must be like, but I've heard it described as terrifying, and you are constantly in a state of crisis. And so oftentimes it can be difficult, and it sounds counterintuitive, but when you become housed, there's a new skill set you have to learn. Like, you need to be taught sometimes that you've got to turn your stove off after you finish cooking, or you don't leave your windows open when the heat is on. That's going to cause it's going to be a really expensive. Exactly. And so oftentimes things that people who have been housed, and I would say you and me, for example, would know a lot of these things. Maybe we learned it in our family setting. Maybe we just know it because we've been housed our whole lives.
We don't know anything else, right?
Exactly. And so we do find sometimes that there are some educational opportunities with our clients, and we really are proud of the fact that we handhold them if they need it. If they need a lot of support, which we call case management, that's part of that whole case management model that's part of Housing First. If they need that permanent support, then we are there to provide it for them, because again, we recognize that the most important thing for them is to get housed, but then the next important thing is for them to stay there successfully.
Right.
And that's incredibly important to the work that we do.
I want to kind of go back to like when Homeward Bound started. If you could talk a little bit about that, and then wondering if Housing First has always been part of that, or has that been something that was learned, discovered as Homeward Bound as an organization developed and grew?
Sure. So we as an organization have been around for about 32 years.
Okay.
We started, as many nonprofits began, through the faith community. Oftentimes churches, faith partners will get together and go, I see this community need, no one's addressing it,
Right.
It's critical, and we're going to step in and be the solution. And so we started it was a really collaboration between a couple of churches in downtown Asheville, recognizing the need to provide support for those experiencing homelessness. And so it really started, Homeward Bound years ago started as Hospitality House, as a sheltering agency. And we have grown over time, and not just in staffing and programs and all of that, but we have grown in terms of our approach to addressing the issue of homelessness. And so you asked about when Housing First became part of that, and that actually happened for us in 2006.
Okay.
We didn't create the Housing First model. We just recognized it was that it was just the best practice
Made
out
sense.
there. It made perfect sense. And so in 2006, we adopted it as an agency and changed our name from Hospitality House to Homeward Bound. And we also were very involved in the 10-year plan to end homelessness through the city of Asheville. It was a community effort.
Right.
And so through that work, we had a lot of partners who believed in this approach as well. And again, I mentioned we did not start the Housing First approach. That actually started in New York in the late 90s.
Okay.
But it is considered the national best practice to end homelessness. And we are very proud to be the provider of that here in Western North Carolina.
And you guys do a great job at it, if I can say so.
Thank you.
Yeah. When did you get involved with Homeward Bound?
Well,
I was gonna say, what was your journey? Have you always been here in Asheville? Is this home for you, et cetera?
Well, I have been in this community for 21 years. I actually live in the Weaverville area, and have been very involved in the nonprofit community for a very long time. Really, that entire time that I've been here, I quite honestly had heard about Homeward Bound, but had not really known that much about the work until last fall, when I was approached to have a conversation about coming in as the interim executive director. The organization was in the process of identifying new leadership, and so I was coming in for a few months to provide kind of a bridge during that time. And I just really felt called to do this work and recognized during the course of my interim position that it would be really hard to walk away. And so I started considering and, of course, expressing to the board of directors that I just really felt committed and called to this work.
I can make this permanent.
Yes, hopefully, yes. And, of course, we have a wonderful board of directors who led that search, and so I don't know if I actually answered when I started as interim. That was in January of this year, January of 2019. And I started as the permanent executive director at the end of April. So I like to say I'm new-ish. I've had a number of people say you can say that the first year, and then you're not really new anymore. And
then you're just new, no-ish,
yes,
right?
exactly. So but it is really gratifying work. I quite honestly feel like it's the most important work I've done in my career. I've been engaged in a lot of really meaningful projects and community efforts because of the nonprofit work that I've been afforded or the opportunity to take part in. But because of the nature of our work and where I see that lives are literally being saved because of the work that this organization does, I am just honored to be a part of it, and I am really proud of the staff who are involved in this work. They are very well trained, but they also come to the table with a huge heart for this mission, and that's what it takes first. You've got to really be passionate about this work to really be successful.
Right.
And we definitely have that on our staff.
I'm sure it can be a little bit of an emotional roller coaster at times, can't it?
It can be.
So you're in this newish time period. Curious to know if there's anything that you didn't know about homelessness that you've learned in the last year that just really has stood out to you. We're like, it makes so much sense now, but I would have never thought.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I had somebody ask me that not too long ago, and I've learned so much through this role. What I've learned the most about, I guess, the issue of homelessness is that those who experience it are very resilient, and they face challenges that I would never have imagined had I not embarked on this work. I hear so many stories. I think that oftentimes when you see someone who is experiencing homelessness out in the community, you may make assumptions, and I say you, I'm talking in general terms, but people oftentimes will make assumptions about how someone may have arrived at homelessness, and there are so many factors involved, and thankfully, most people in our community have support systems when a crisis occurs, and they have the necessary support to get through those, because we all experience them. And what happens oftentimes with people who experience homelessness is they don't have that support at the right time. And so oftentimes one incident, one factor can create a certain scenario, and then you have another incident that compounds that, and then next thing you know, it's this
Snowball.
ripple effect. Absolutely, it's a ripple effect, and then they find themselves homeless. They may get evicted, they can't pay their mortgage or their rent, they lose their job, they can't pay their utilities. So many things are interconnected, and so what we find is it's been a journey to get to this point for a lot of people when they're experiencing homelessness. And to look at someone and to make an assumption about, for example, choices they've made that caused them to become homeless are just not real accurate. And so I feel like for me it's been a great learning opportunity about compassion and what it means to take care of each other and what it means to, as a community, rally around and provide support for this issue.
I know you all have a lot of different things that you have going on, and we're going to talk about the Key Commons project in a moment, but I was wondering if somebody said or asked you, like, what your focus is at Homeward Bound outside of, ending homelessness. So maybe is there a flagship program maybe would be a better question, I suppose?
Well,
what would you point to and be like, this is what we're doing?
Right. Well, I can tell you most recently what we're really focused on is really the reason you called me to come and talk today. And that is moving into the space of affordable housing. And we have great landlords. You happen to be a landlord who works with us in partnership to house our clients. And we have great relationships, but we also recognize that if we want to be able to secure affordable housing and maintain that stock, that we also need to be in that space. We have oftentimes worked with landlords who, for a variety of reasons, felt like they had to raise their rents. And oftentimes their costs are going up, so that means rent has to go up. And so what that means for us as an agency is that we are challenged by being able to provide subsidies. Fair market rate is $7.99. And that's what we
That's super. $7.99 for a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom?
1 bedroom.
Okay.
Yes, and so what that means is we're out there looking for 1-bedroom efficiency apartments, and it can be really difficult to find that, especially in a town like Asheville that's really popular. And there are a lot of folks who are wanting to move into the real estate space themselves for other reasons, and which is fine. However, that makes it really challenging for the work that we do when we're trying to find affordable housing for those who have very limited means.
Right. I guess let's go ahead and talk about the Key Commons project. Why don't we start with just the brief overview, and I'm sure I'll have a couple of questions as you get into it. What is it? When's it happening? Why did you guys decide to start it, et cetera?
Right. Okay. So I will back up just a little bit.
Okay.
We recognized in the fall of 2018 that we'd actually been talking about moving into the affordable housing space, if you will. And we had some clients who were located on a property called Short, Michigan in West Asheville. And we got the news that the owner was wanting to sell. And he didn't live in this community, lived outside the community, but just didn't need the property anymore. And so we were really starting to get concerned, because that would mean most likely that our clients would have to be displaced or find other places to live. And so that's when the conversation started happening, about whether or not this was the property we wanted to start with. And it just made sense. We already had clients there. It was an 11-unit property, or is an 11-unit property. And we didn't have clients in every single one of them, but we had enough that we recognized that this could be a great opportunity for us. So we decided we were going to pursue ownership. Yes. And so that happened. As you know, you're in the business. It takes a while to do all your due diligence and surveys and environmental studies and all of that stuff to get to closing. But we are very grateful through a lot of hard work and great partnering with the city of Asheville and Buncombe County and other key stakeholders. We were able to acquire this property. We also had a donor who gave us a good size gift to help support the purchase and the renovations on this property. And so we closed on October 23rd. And so,
wow. So not even a month yet.
Yes, like 2 weeks ago.
Wow,
so we
very
started
exciting.
these conversations last fall and became the new owners on October 23rd, 2 weeks ago.
Very exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting. And we, in the process, decided instead of calling it Short, Michigan, which was honestly the name that we had for it because it was a property on Short, Michigan
Right.
Avenue in West Asheville. And so we decided to change the name to Key Commons because we believe that we are the key to ending homelessness, and we thought it would be meaningful to have the word key in the name, and future properties will also have that name in it or have that word in it because, again, we believe we're the key to ending homelessness.
Well, it's part of your logo, too, if am I recollecting that correctly?
Yes,
okay.
It is part of our logo. Absolutely.
So you guys are 2 weeks into ownership, right?
Yes.
So what's happening now, and how soon do you anticipate it being up and running 100% the way you envisioned it?
That is a great question. We have a few unknowns in terms of the timeline for the renovations. We do have a general contractor. We are working with Corner Rock Builders, and we have them starting, I guess, we're looking at next week in terms of starting the actual renovations. The last 2 weeks have been a bit of a whirlwind. Yeah, and I mentioned that we closed on the 23rd. We actually had volunteers from Duke Energy on site that day. They took down one of the fences, or I guess the fence that was in front of the property. And we planted some shrubbery and flowers and rose bushes and did a lot of beautification on the property because we felt like that was really the first step in having this or really developing this property so it felt like a community and a neighborhood. It had been a long time in coming. There had not been a lot of TLC on that property in a long time, and so that was really our first step. We also, because of the closing and the fact that we're going to be moving some more people in, had to do some inspections, and we did a lot of just maintenance on the property. So and I say we did a lot of maintenance. We are still in the process of doing some of that. Some of the units are currently have residents and some don't. And so when we have our general contractor start, he is going to start working on the units that are vacant so that they can get up to speed and up to code, and then we can start moving clients in there and then start building from there. We also plan to take the 11 units and split 3 of them up, so we will eventually have 14 units in all.
Very exciting,
and all affordable housing, and we get to decide who the best folks are for those properties based on their needs.
With the rent that comes in, is that something that goes just back into Homeward Bound's like operating fund then? Is that, I don't know if like, what's the thought process on that, I guess?
We are still working out a lot of those details. We have a partnership with HUD, and we are still working on some of the logistics of that. But we do get funding to support placing clients in housing, and we certainly have to be careful with how all of that works. But again, the idea is to make sure that all of this is affordable housing so that we can continue to put our clients there.
Right, absolutely.
And keep it affordable, which is the most important part.
This is the first project of its type, right? That as far as you all actually owning the real estate where your clients are being housed?
Absolutely.
Is this something that you guys are seeing as the first of many, or is it just dipping the toe in the water, figuring out if it's successful, and then maybe pursuing it again? This is our first foray into ownership. Right.
We have plans. I mean, we have every hope that we can continue this as opportunities arise. Of course, it has to be the right fit for our organization. This is considered scattered site, which means that we have clients who are located. We have scattered site. It's also part of our permanent supportive housing model, but we've had clients in a variety of settings. If we can find the right property that has the right number of units on it, this is a really good manageable size for us. So to answer your question, we would love to do a lot more of this. Again, it has to be the right property and the right opportunity. But again, we've got great partnerships, and we have every belief that we can continue down this road and securing financial support for the project the way we've done it with Key Commons. Right. We've got home funding, which is actually HUD funding that comes through the local government, the local municipality. And so if we can continue that model, we see no reason to continue pursuing projects like this.
Awesome. That's really exciting. On that note, 5 years from now, if somebody says, hey, was the Key Commons a success? And the answer to that question is yes.
Yes.
And then the follow-up is a why. So how would you define success, 5 years from now?
Right. Well, success for us means that our clients who are housed are able to stay there successfully. And I talked a little bit earlier about how a lot of our clients are chronically homeless, which means they've experienced that for a really long time. And some of them have actually been in housing and were not successful and fell out of housing and have kind of been back and forth. And for us, success would be housing clients who are able to live happy and healthy in a safe environment long term, really for the rest of their lives.
Is there anything about the project specifically that you would be looking at to determine if it's a successful project other than the placing, because you're placing people now and everything, so is there certain metrics about like financial viability that and then we don't have to get into the numbers. I guess I'm just wondering how would you sell this project to the board again, right? Because you're still providing housing with or without it. So there's a little bit of a different tweak with the ownership of it. So how would you just know if ownership was successful?
Well, for us, the biggest motivation was being able to control, really to control that environment and to control the affordability of it. We feel like as landlords, we can be more responsive at times, or we just have a better understanding of our client needs. And so for us, that's a big part of our success as well. Yeah. For example, if we have someone who is struggling with some medical issues and needs to be taken to the doctor, then we can provide that kind of support. Most landlords don't do that. If you look at our model according to the Housing First description, we provide the case management, and basically what that means is what the client needs. You know, it may be a higher level of attention and helping them with a budget in terms of how they pay their rent, because we require that our clients pay 30% of their income. And so there needs to be some budgeting talks oftentimes. They need to know what that means. What does it mean to save this amount of my money each month so that it can go towards rent? So being able to provide that additional support for those who may have more unique needs than other tenants or clients.
No, it's, again, super exciting. Just rounding out here, just another question, just for the benefit of people who are tuning in and whatnot. A lot of what you're saying or talking about when you're all describing, except maybe the ownership piece, when it comes to Homeward Bound, is I think what a lot of people would associate with Section 8 as far as just, funded housing or backed housing. Could you give us a quick differentiation between what you all do and what Section 8 provides? Yeah. And maybe explain what the overlap is as well.
Yeah. Well, with Section 8, there's not, I think it goes back to the level of support. Oftentimes, we can also accept clients who may or may not be successful in other environments. One project I did want to mention. Can I mention another project we're going to be?
You can mention any project you want.
Okay.
Absolutely, go for it.
It's very exciting. It's all related. But we are also going to be embarking on a capital campaign for a project that we're calling the Asheville Buncombe House, which is an 80-unit complex for the chronically homeless. So when you talk about the work that Homeward Bound does and how it's different from Section 8 housing or other housing models in the community, this particular model would be 24-hour security, case management on site, space for community partners to come in and do some collaborative efforts. It would be a much more controlled environment, and that's where Homeward Bound is really distinguishing itself from other housing models in the community. We currently have a program or a housing complex called the Woodfin, where we have the same model that I just described for 18 clients. And we have, as I mentioned, the 24-hour security. We actually can help control the traffic, for example. If we have a client who has a hard time telling people, no, I don't want company, or has a hard time kind of regulating company in their apartment, we can be that measure of support for them. And if someone comes to see them, we can say, well, they're not taking guests right now, and so there's a lot of control within that environment that is great for the client. And so there are a lot of housing models that aren't going to do that and provide that kind of support.
Sounds like the biggest difference is that you guys do a really concerted effort, or you make a very concerted effort about curating the ecosystem, right? That people are living in and being supported around. Is there anything that I've missed that you want to share about what you all do? I know we could probably sit here and talk all day about.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about, understandably, about, our goal is to get people into housing. And another really important part of our work is that when people are experiencing a crisis, oftentimes we can step in and prevent them from losing their homes. We have a program called diversion, which means that if we need to, we can we can have conversations with them. For example, if they think they're getting ready to lose their housing, we can say, well, have you checked with this family resource? Have you checked with this friend? Could you stay with this friend for a couple weeks until you can get back on your feet? We also have a really strong veterans program where we have a lot of funding that is provided through Veterans Affairs, and we are able to provide deposits. For example, if people don't have funding for a deposit, say for example, someone comes to us and says, I've got an apartment identified, I can have it if I can come up with a deposit. We can provide support for that, and that oftentimes is so much easier. If you can get someone quickly into housing, or you can keep someone from losing their housing, that is so much easier than trying to identify housing for someone who's been chronically homeless. So we believe that all of that work is important in the Housing First model that we have. We also have our day center, and
is that AHOPE?
That's
right?
AHOPE, yes, and that's actually one of what we consider our front door, if you will. That's where clients come in contact with us first, and we actually see on average 175 individuals a day who access the day center. And we believe that everyone has a right to housing, and everyone is allowed to come to AHOPE, even if they're not allowed to go some other places in our community, other resources. And so we're really proud of that, because we believe that we meet people where they are. And so I mentioned the 175 people who come a day. They are coming oftentimes to get out of the cold.
Right.
They come sometimes to get a cup of coffee. They come to be in community with others. They come to see their caseworkers or case managers. They come to check on their status on the housing list. I mean, it's a variety. It looks a lot of different ways, but that support is really important. One thing we're also really proud of and think is critical to the success for our clients is that we can be a mailing address for them. 19 North Ann Street. 19 North Ann Street is our address for AHOPE, and we have clients who give that out as their address because they need to get mail as well. They need to get Social Security. They need to get IDs mailed to them. They oftentimes need to be able to have correspondence with family members and others. And so being able to provide an address for them is a really important thing.
Absolutely. Personal question on this a little bit, going not from a Homeward Bound perspective, but from a you perspective.
Yeah.
What are you the most excited about as far as all the different things that are going on?
Gosh,
if it's even possible for you to like pick one thing out, that might be a tough ask, but
I'm incredibly excited about our move into the housing space and being able to be more in control over that. Right. We oftentimes have to deal with challenges that we have absolutely no control over. Right. If there is a dearth of affordable housing, that it's really hard to affect that. If we can own it, and if we can continue to pursue opportunities to allow us to become owners on more properties, then we feel like we're really more in control of that part of the process. And that sense of control feels really exciting. Of course, yeah. And I personally, the thing I love, one of the things I love most about my job is being able to talk in the community about it, and to also get others excited about the work that we do, and to see the significance and to really to be able to share with them how they can be a part of it. I have conversations all the time, a couple times a day often, with people who want to get involved in this work and just need to know what that looks like. And it looks a lot of different ways. We have a number of volunteers who come into AHOPE and help pass out mail, or help serve coffee, or pass out towels for people who want to take showers. We have volunteers who come to events and help set up event spaces for us. I mean, we have people who help with our Room in the Inn program for our women who are in emergency shelter. So there are so many ways for people to get engaged, and that's what I've found is one of the most exciting things, is being able to identify what someone is interested in, and then going, oh, here's a perfect opportunity for you, and this will be perfect for you.
Well, that's a great kind of, as we wrap things up. So if somebody wants to get involved, what's the first step that they should take?
I would encourage anyone who wants to learn more about Homeward Bound and then, of course, get involved as well to go to our website. It's homewardboundwnc.org, and they can find a lot of information on our website. It's current. There are a lot of photos and links in there. There are resources they can access if they want to learn more about the issue of homelessness. We also have everyone listed, all of our key leaders who are listed on the website if they want to, for example, get engaged with our volunteer coordinator or resource development director and want to make a donation. There's a link on there to do that as well. So that's a great first step. And then they can also sign up for a tour. We really like to share with people that the best way to see firsthand what we do is to come to AHOPE and to see what that environment is like, and then to take a tour of it so they can understand what that process looks like. Because again, that's really that first connection with the work that we do.
Awesome. Meredith, any questions or that I didn't ask that you want to answer anyways as we finish up our time here?
Gosh, you asked me some great questions. One thing I did want to mention, because you were asking me how long the renovation on Key Commons is going to be. We can always come back to you with an update.
Please.
We would love to come back when we're all ready to go. And that timeline is probably going to be 6 months, 9 months or so. But I would love to come back and give you an update on our first ownership project.
No, absolutely. Always would be happy to have you here as a guest on the show. So by all means, consider it an open invitation.
Great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, there you go, guys. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if you enjoyed this conversation, if you enjoy the show in general, it would mean the world to us if you're willing to, leave us a rating, review, share it with a friend. See you guys next week. Take care.